Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I'm really happy to see so many familiar faces here, and also quite a great amount of new people, which makes me also very happy. Today, it's my great pleasure and honor to introduce Alina Mozolevska to you. She's our today's speaker. She's a linguist and a cultural studies scholar from the National Petro Mohyla Black Sea University in Mykolayiv. And she is an associate professor there in the Faculty of Philology. She finished her PhD in linguistics, with a major in Romance languages at Taras Shevchenko National University in Kiev, in Ukraine. Her current research interests include media studies, discourse analysis, and border studies, and political discourse analysis. And currently, she holds a guest professorship as visiting professor at the UniGR Center for Border Studies at Saarland University. Before I hand over to Alina, I just want to mention one of her latest publications that came out in March 2021. It's titled Construction of Borders and Walls in Contemporary Ukrainian Literature, and it is an analysis of Alexander Ivanets and Taras Antipovich's novels. And I thought I mentioned that because it might be interesting for all of you who attend the Border Studies seminar, and I will post the reference in the chat. All right, so without further ado, Alina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this kind presentation, and thank you for the invitation. 1 minute, I need to share my screen. I'm seeing that I'm in the presentation mode. Yes, okay. So the title of my today's talk is a little bit different from what I'm doing in my professional activity as an academic. But since the start of full-scale invasion, I started to be interested how the discourse of war is being discursively constructed in media. And especially I'm interested in the way how visuals are used in the justification or in the propagation of main narratives in this war. And today I'd like to present a talk about the war of visuals, and I tried to draw a tentative comparative analysis of main visual narratives in Ukrainian media, social media, and in Russian media, but not opposition, but media, social channels which have pro-Kremlin position. The main sources of visuals that I'm using in my presentation, they are Facebook groups, the groups in Vkontakte, and Telegram channels, which I used to circulate different visuals and cartoons. For example, for Ukrainian social media, it's a Telegram channel Chernobyki, and for Russian, they have Zlobodnevные карикатуры, for example, the channel. So I collected more than 1,000 visuals, and now I'd like to present some results. Many of you heard the expression that the current war in Ukraine, it's also first TikTok war or first social media war, and indeed now we see that information war in digital space is as important and as military actions on the battlefield. We see how different narratives compete in digital space and try to persuade the other, or find supporters of one or another opinion. And really, in this war, the digital media are weaponized. It's not only about artworks. It's also about everyday life of Ukrainians that are exposed in social media. And it's also about the attempts to construct the image of the self and the image of the other with the help of different tools. One of these tools is humor that is extensively used in this war. We can say that to some extent, humor is used as a war strategy because social media are flooded with memes, anonymized cartoons, cartoons that are produced by famous cartoonists from Ukraine or from Russia or from other countries. And they all present their vision of, or they attempt to construct the reality, or they present the vision of current war in Ukraine. And we can say that, for example, for Ukrainians, humor is also a means of coping with collective trauma and the attempt to understand the new reality and to process difficult events that are happening in their lives. But sometimes it's also a tool of propaganda or anti-propaganda, and in some extent, it also can be it can also express a tool of nonviolent resistance. We will see that the visuals and funny images are also can be used as a tool of reconstruction of national narrative, or the construction of new narratives that are that become very popular among users of social media. Interestedly enough, while we compare Ukrainian digital space and Russian digital space, we can find a lot of pictures that are almost identical, the same, although they convey sometimes opposite meaning or idea. For example, here you see two images. The image on the left is from Facebook. Unfortunately, I don't know who is the author of this meme. I couldn't find the author. But on the right, you see the same picture that is transformed to convey another narrative. The same you can see here. On the left, you see the original image of Ukrainian cartoonist Zhuravel, who created a very vivid picture to compare the behavior of Ukrainian soldiers and Russian soldiers. But we see that the picture is completely transformed on the right. The message is quite the opposite. And it was enough to change the labels or the flags on the uniform to completely transform the narrative into something else. Another example of resemblance of the tools of propaganda or tools of construction of reality in social media is the way we see the other, the enemy. In Ukrainian media, Russians are compared to orcs or to zombie. And you see one of the examples, it's the portrait of Sergei Lavrov, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And he's presented as some evil creature. But on the right, you see an example, a typical representation of Ukrainians in Russian social media. We'll see more examples a little bit later. Ukrainians are often compared or associated with pigs or animals, which helps to lower the sensibility towards the other, and it helps to cross the line when you are able to aggress, when you are able to kill. Another example of the narrative that is used in both media is the I'm not sure how to express it. It's the use of spirituality of the soul, the image of soul in visuals. On the left, you see one of the works from the series of many pictures that were created by Olga Wilson. She's inspired by news from Ukrainian media, and then she creates the image of souls of people who died during the Russian aggression in Ukraine. But on the right, you see the image that really alike to this, but the souls that are presented at this picture, they are from the past. These are the souls of the soldiers who died during the Second World War. And we see that the tool is the same, but the message is different. In Ukrainian digital space, artists, they are mostly concentrated on the present or on the future, while in Russian media, there is a strong connection between the past, the myth of Great Patriotic War, and the current aggression and the current war in Ukraine. Another image that is used in both media is the image of Titanic, of something that is going to perish, to die. But it's also interpreted in different way. On the left, you see an example from Ukrainian social media where Ukraine represents iceberg and Russia represents Titanic, while in Russian social media, we see that actually Titanic is associated with Ukraine, and we see Zelensky on the top of this ship, which is sailing. One more feature that is common for both social media is the concentration on the image of the leader. As for Ukraine, Zelensky is one of the symbols of resistance or of the nation state. For Russia, the image of Putin is very important. And we see this, how this is reflected in visual space of social media. For example, in Russian social media, the visuals support one of the theses of Russian propaganda, that Zelensky is addict or he's manipulated by United States. We see how official line of propaganda is reflected in virtual space of social media. But in Ukrainian digital space, we see the opposite process of heroization of even the construction of the myth of invincible Zelensky, of a superhero. And we can compare it with the representation of Vladimir Putin in Russian social media. For example, you see here several visuals that can try to construct the positive vision or positive attitude towards Vladimir Putin. And we see, for example, on the picture on the left, on the top, that Putin is the president from God, or blessed president, and others, they are not equal to him. And again, here you see a strong connection with the great myth of Second World War, of Great Patriotic War. And you see how the history of Soviet Union or Soviet heritage has been intermingled with the present of the country. And here you see some examples of the visualization of Vladimir Putin in Ukrainian social media. As you see, some of the tools, they are very similar. One of the features, of the main features that we could see here, that there is a tendency to demonize the other and idealize the self, but also an attempt to construct the new reality. For Russian social media, the reality is based on the Soviet heritage, on the past. And in Ukrainian social media, there is a search for new pillars, for new basis for the construction of the self. We'll skip this. I think these two, I just wanted to go, it will be too much. These are more examples of the similarity of the narratives, but I wanted to skip it because it's too much. We will talk about this part. What are other symbols or elements that are crucial for the construction of the visual narratives? We can single out several narratives that are constructed with the help of the maps or national symbols, such as trident or two-headed eagle for Russia. These elements are tightly connected to the image of the nation state, and the borders of the nation state, they convey the idea of the national idea for Ukraine or for Russia. And now we will see several examples how these three elements, the borders and the trident and the two-headed eagle, are functioning in digital space. For example, here you see several maps that are used in digital space. It's interesting, but maps are very important in any war. And we can find also a lot of propaganda or a lot of cartoons that are using maps in the First World War and the Second World War. And it's the same for this war. For example, here you see several maps that I found on Facebook, and they are all have one feature. They try to destroy or dissolve Russia as a state, as a main aggressor. Or they also try to draw the true borders, the real borders of Ukraine that are denied by Russia. Also here you see several examples how the scale is used to underline the fierce resistance of Ukrainian people. None of these maps is true. On the left, the territory of Russia has been increased in some a little, and on the right you see that it was diminished. It became small, but except this, we can find a lot of examples how the scale, this relationship between something small and something big is being represented. I won't give more examples of this because we don't have a lot of time, but as you see, the maps are used to talk about the resistance, but also they used to reaffirm or reconfirm the real borders. Another example, very interesting example how Ukrainian map has been used is to express trauma. A lot of people are traumatized, and this this experience of losing one's home, of leaving people who you love behind, it reinforces the feeling of belonging. And this feeling of belonging is also expressed through the map. Here you see several examples of this. Ukraine is hugged. It's on the middle, you see the example when the doctor asks, what's wrong? And the girl says, it hurts here in Ukraine. So the geo-body of Ukraine, it's few examples, but I have at least 25 pictures of the same type when the destiny of the country is directly associated with the personal trauma and personal pain and personal experience. And the geo-body represents the pain of the nation and also individual pain, individual trauma. And if we see closely more examples from Russian media, we can find, for example, these maps that these are also maps, but they are used with different aim, different purpose. For example, on the left, you see that the territory of Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic, they are spread all over the whole Europe. Or on the right, you see that the Russian flag is being laid over the whole map of the world. And here we see that actually maps are also used to support one of the official narratives that Russia can repeat everything, can gain victory again and go to La Manche, so invade all the Europe. These are examples from group of contacti who are very supportive of the politics of Kremlin. And I think that they are used also to hit a little bit the feeling of this imperial sense of invasion. Also, we can find other examples of this expression of imperialism. For example, on the left, you see how the flag of Poland is being, as they say, fixed with the blue line, with the transformation into Russian flag. Or on the right, you see the building of capital that is painted into with the colors of Russian Kremlin. So all these examples, they serve to support the idea of invectiveness of Russia and of the idea that they can do everything and they can invade for everybody. Another symbol that is used to visually represent Russia is a Russian bear. This symbol is traditionally connected to the Russian Federation since many years, and it has two main symbolic realization in Russian social media. One of the realization you see here, so the bear, the warrior, the soldier, the bear who is very aggressive and can attack. But interestingly enough, we can find also this image as a protective mother, as somebody who liberates, somebody who protects. And these images, they appeared after this illegal referendum in Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. And they were recirculated to support one of the narratives of the reunification of Russian lands with the Russian Federation. And we see that Ukrainian regions, they are presented as little bears who are joining their mother. The same bear, the same representation is used also in Ukrainian media. But in the majority of the pictures, the bear is represented as very aggressive and uncontrollable. And here you see one more example of the correlation between something big and something small. Bear is very big, but Ukrainians are presented as bees or as smaller animals, but those who are able to protect themselves. And throughout the development of the aggression, the aggressive Russian bear is gradually transformed into this in Ukrainian media. You see even on the middle of the picture, the comparison between February and March. So the successes of Ukrainian army also impact the vision of this big aggressive bear in social media. And you see how constantly Ukrainian people, they do this transition from the victimhood to the glorification of the self, glorification of their victories. And we talked about two-headed ego before very quickly. Here you see several examples what people do with the two-headed ego in Ukrainian social media. So it's decapitated, fried, it's transformed into in many ways. And also it will be interesting to see that Ukrainian trident also is used in Russian cartoons. But often trident represents a weapon against Ukrainian people in these cartoons. And this supports one more narrative of Ukrainians who attack themselves and bomb their cities themselves. Very interesting interpretation of the trident you see on the bottom on the left, where it's transformed into 404, so the country that doesn't exist. The same narrative is present in Ukrainian media, but we saw it on the map when Russia was also labeled with this number. So we see that a lot of techniques are the same, but we will see more examples. Sometimes we have more variety in Russian media. Another interesting aspect that I'm analyzing is the way how not only the countries are represented, but also how people are visualized and soldiers or warriors are visualized. We can say that here you see two main narratives that prevail in social media. Russian soldiers are often presented as looters or orcs or zombies, and Ukrainian warriors, the image on the right, are often presented as puppets, marionettes of somebody, as those who cannot act themselves, of those who are controlled by somebody. And often we see a tendency to dehumanize the other. Here, for example, you see that again, Ukrainians are presented as pigs, but from the cartoon Winnie the Pooh, or they are presented as insects. So the human traces are erased and they are replaced by some animal features. And actually they deprive the other of personal features and create a monster instead of the other. Here you see some other examples of the representation of Ukrainians in Russian social media. Again, as I said, that they are often presented as somebody who are manipulated, or they are not masters of their actions. But when we analyze further or deeper, we also can see the examples when human features are completely erased, and some animals are used instead of Ukrainians. And the most strong association is with the pigs. This, I think, because this animal not really cute, and this animal is not really attractive, and maybe it's easier to kill or to aggress somebody who you do not consider as a person, but as an animal. And on the middle, you see one more typical representation of Ukrainians in Russian social media. It's not even an animal, it's some mythical creature with a typical haircut of Ukrainian Cossacks, but it's not really pleasant. Again, we see attempts to connect the historical narratives of Great Patriotic War with the current aggression, and a lot of visuals are used to convey the message of Russian propaganda that Russian soldiers, they fight the Nazis, or they fight fascist troops in Ukraine, and this is also supported by the visuals. It's not possible to construct the other without constructing the self. Russian army is constructed mostly on, as I said, historical narratives. And you see that on the right, you have a picture from the times of Great Patriotic War, Second World War, and the picture of current invasion. But also, maybe somebody who is from Russia can help me. I don't know why, but Russian soldiers are sometimes associated with the characters of Soviet animation. You see these characters on the left, Cheburashka and Crocodile Gena. These elements of the construction of the other and the self are supported also by new myths. And before we will see more examples from Ukrainian social media, I would like to talk about these visuals. As for Ukraine, for Russia, these were also a place of construction of new myths that can mobilize people in the fight. For example, here you see on the left the modification of the chocolate Alenka, but now it's Aloshka. It's a story of a boy who waits for the Russian troops somewhere in some village and says hello to everybody. And this Alyoshka is now very present in social media as a symbol of this war. But also the Georgian ribbon, which you see on the middle is one of the symbols of Russian army, and it's also very present. Just one example here, but it's also very present in social media, together with the letters ZOV. That have a lot of interpretation, visual and textual interpretation in social media. Here I put only one example, but we have really a lot. And another legend or narrative that is also very present in social media, it's the story of Ukrainian grandma. You see the image on the right. It's a Ukrainian grandma who met by mistake Ukrainian army with the red Soviet flag, and she became one of the symbols of Russian army and one of the justifiers or the narrative of justification of this aggression. And again, we see that all these narratives are tightly connected to the story of Great Patriotic War. As Alyoshka wears the uniform of Soviet army, the words "we will win again" on the middle, and also the grandma on the right is also with the Soviet flag. It's interesting, but the monument to this grandma was inaugurated in Mariupol in the summer. So it's really one of the symbols. Now we will try to see what are the main narratives that are used to visualize the other and the self in Ukrainian social media. Here you see some examples. I said that the main image that is used in Ukrainian social media is the Russian soldier as a looter. After the events in Bucha and Irpin, and after the occupation of Kharkiv, we saw a lot of proofs that and of the crimes, and we see the consequences of this occupation, and we have really a lot of images that convey this message and try to show what the Russian army did in these the occupied territories. And also here we can, I put here only one image on the left on the top, but there is also a tendency to dehumanize the enemy, to compare it with something that is already dead, not the animal, but orcs or zombies, creatures who are dead inside. Because of the cruelty of Russian army in these territories, we in Ukrainian media, people found this way to express these horrors. And if we talk about the visualization of the self, interestingly enough, here in Ukrainian social space, a lot of narratives of mass culture are functioning. So we can't really find any. Yes, we can find allusions between the personality of Putin and personality of Hitler, and in this direction we also have the comparison with the World War II. But if we talk about the image of Ukrainian army, here social media absorb all the ideals of strong men, invincible men, and they try to realize, to express the admiration in this way. For example, we have the comparison with Superman, with adventures, with the warriors of Sparta on the middle, but also we can find, for example, the visuals from Star Wars or from Matrix, or the use of the strongest actors or the toughest guys from Hollywood, and even At Home Alone or Adventures, I already said. So there is really a strong tendency to combine any visual image of Superman and compare it with Ukrainian army. But I think it's also it also works as a more universal symbol because it can attract also the attention of not only of Ukrainians but of people from other cultures in nations, and maybe it's more on the surface. But I think it works in more universal way because it really conveys the message directly and uses a lot of visual representations. And as we saw for Russian media, they had their main like mythological narratives. In Ukraine, we also can find several examples. Here you can see several pictures that represent new myth of the war. For example, on the left, on the bottom, you see the warrior who has only 3 ways to go, and he can only go to Chernobyevka. Chernobyevka is a region in Kherson where we have military airport, and Russian troops there were attacked for more than 20 times, but they are coming back and they are shot again. Nobody knows why they are coming back there, but so it's like a secret place for them, and they are all the time attacked there. On the middle, you see the representation of one of the narratives of this aggression is the witches of Konotop, who can cover the sky instead of NATO. And on the right, you see grandma with tomato jar who shoot the Russian drone. And these are really the new folklore, the stories that we tell in social media, or we tell it from one to another. And these are stories who really help to process the horrors of the war and to create positive mood. These are only several examples, but we have much more. And I would like to finish with this myth or story of Ukrainian tractor. Maybe you are all familiar with this. It's one of the heroes of this war, tractor who drags not only tanks, but also Russian Kremlin. I think that I will stop here. Thank you for your attention. And as we saw, we have a lot of mechanism of visual representation of the war. In Russian media and in Ukrainian media, we can find similarities, but we still have differences. For example, Russian media, visuals are strongly connected to the past, in Ukrainian to the present and the future. And as for the similar tendencies, we see the dehumanization of the enemy, the construction of the self, the construction of the other, and the construction of the world around us. Thank you for your attention. I would be happy to hear some comments and answer your questions. 1 minute, I will turn on the lights because it's too dark. 1 minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much for this rich presentation. We have, I think, about 20-25 minutes for discussion, and I'm happy to moderate. I will wait until Alina is back to call the first.
I'm here.
You're here. Okay, yeah. Good. So I don't know who was first, Diana or Ivan, whoever wants to go first, please.
Okay, maybe then I'll go first. So first of all, I want to say a very big thank you to Alina Mozolevska, because it was a wonderful presentation, very rich and especially interesting. And for me, it also kind of sparkled this idea about the moment that, about the narrative about murder, which is usually applied to Russians and the idea of orcs and so on and so forth, because if we'll go back to Tolkien, for example, there is a point that actually orcs cannot reproduce themselves naturally. And according to Tolkien, in his original books, orcs were reproduced through raping women on occupied territories. And I think that through this, we could also kind of make a slight connection with the point that, in a sense, also Russian regime now can maybe also be reproduced only through the construction of this idea of other and through invading it, because only through this idea of kind of external enemy who is causing all the troubles inside of Russia, they can legitimize what is going on and all the misery that is reproducing inside of Russia. And I thought that also this idea of orcs raping women in Tolkien could also be attached, for example, to a feminist lens of analysis, in a sense that rape symbolically is always attached to invasion, to somebody's autonomy, causing an inherent trauma, and so on and so forth. And because also in TikTok, for example, as much as I can see, usually there is a big trend of portraying Ukraine, for example, and Belarus in a very feminine manner. While Russia is portrayed as hyper-masculine, and it was also very appealing while we've had a protest in Belarus, while women in white were symbolically opposing this hyper-masculine regime, also for Lukashenko, and as a Putin's puppet. Mm-hmm. And I also want to ask you a small question, and I'm not sure if it is an easy answer to that, but I think that aesthetically, it's also striking for me that in Ukrainian media, we can see that even though the narratives may be pretty similar, but Ukrainian usually are much more stylish. And the same was throughout the Belarusian protests, that usually the images that were produced by the protester side were much more stylish than the regime of the Putin's or Lukashenko authorities. And I was thinking, what is the reason besides this? Is there some kind of aesthetics attached to these regimes that look so disgusting visually? Is it something like projecting onto these? Or is it simply because usually like young and more progressive people and intellectuals who can create beautiful visuals usually are kind of like the good side?
On the good side, yeah. Yeah, thank you for the question. Interesting, but I didn't show here in the presentation, but I have several visuals about not really, it's really cruel jokes that Ukrainian women were raped and then they have orc babies. It's present in social media. And I think rape culture is one of elements of Russian propaganda, this masculine aggressive way of communication. It's present in the official, even like the way Putin communicates with others, but it's also present in visual representation of the self and the other. And as for the creativity, I think it's also generation war. And maybe it's the reason because this war is can be defined in different ways. Yeah, it's the war of aggression, the occupation of the territory. But this aggressive war, it's imperial war, the war of the past, when you can reaffirm yourself through the new territories, through the new lands. And maybe it's because of this, we can also say that it's the war between two generations, the old generation and the young generation. And I think that the future is in the hands of the young generation. And because of this, we have a lot of creativity, and maybe including in the protests in Belarus. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but we have I have one in my team. I have one person who works in Tolkien visual discussing this war. So if you want, I can connect you with this person. So she's she writes all about orcs and Mordor and Gondor. So I will be glad to share this contact with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ivan, please, your question.
Thank you so much, Alina, for your presentation. It was sometimes a little hard to watch because of the emotions, but I really applaud your work.
Thank you.
First, a little comment about Cheburashka. When I saw it and when you said about it, the first thing I thought about was that maybe it was an attempt to present Russian soldiers as innocent, as something kind and fuzzy, something that cannot be stained by blood. Maybe it was like this kind of response to the information about Bucha and Irpin and all of other war crimes and atrocities. A question I have to ask is, it's not as perceptive as Diana's one. Well, you probably know more about Russian propaganda than I do right now because I can't just bear looking at it, all of it. So I wanted to ask whether there was or was not any kind of shift or change after Putin announced mass mobilization in Russia in September, whether the narratives have changed.
If we talk about visual representation, I don't see any shifts. If you read the comments, you can see that the moods are different, but I work mostly on images. I think what is now more intensely present is this narrative about the Europe that will die in winter. It's really everywhere. I didn't include it here in database because it's like a side narrative, but it's a part of big conspiracy theory that has been recirculated in Russian media. But it's really, and one thing that is more present now, you know that we have blackouts in Ukraine now because of the Shelling, and it's really difficult to read and to analyze it, but they have a lot of memes and cartoons about this. So I don't know how to analyze it, how to examine it, but people are really happy that in Ukraine, there is no water, gas, light, and people need to survive. This is really, in recent months, it's the most hot topic, and a lot of visuals are created around this topic and about drones that attack Ukraine. So nothing about mobilization.
So they're just trying to shift the attention to other people's problems.
Maybe, yes.
And misery. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and there is a comment about Cheburashka. Thank you, Vlad. So there is a missile systems used in Russian army, and they are called Cheburashka. Thank you, Vlad. Very good comment.
Yeah, thank you. While we are waiting for other comments and questions, maybe I can raise one question. I was wondering, especially about the memes and pictures that you showed about that come from Ukrainian social media, and that showed self-fashioning on the one hand side with the masculine and also very Western. I noticed that it was all Western figures. It was Superman, it was all of these Western movie stars, and then Zelensky in the middle of them. So I was wondering how this corresponds to signs of Western progress. But I'm also very interested in the gender construction. So you showed those hero images on the one hand side, and then you showed also female figures, but it was more it was very different imagery, and showed a very traditional female soft images like pain and worrying and care. And it seems to me that this self-fashioning of Ukraine is very normatively gendered. Yeah, I was wondering what you think about it, and if you see any imagery that runs counter this normativity, or is it something that's very much appreciated and applied?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for the question. So Ukraine, it's a feminine gender in Ukrainian, so it's a country, it's a feminine country woman. I don't know how to explain it. And really the traditional representation of Ukraine and visual representation is a woman. But now we have, we can witness the shift from the woman, like a passive role of the woman towards the active role of the woman, because we have a lot of like militarized images of the woman warriors. I can, unfortunately, I didn't include a lot of pictures, and I didn't include it, but we really see this maybe not that quick, but progressive shift from the passive representation of the woman, like woman mother, to the woman warrior. And I think it reflects the general shift of the discourse, because in official speeches, for example, Zelensky, now he says soldiers men and soldiers women. He constantly includes women everywhere. We see the same in official media discourse. They talk a lot about women in resistance, women in the army, women who fight. And this is also reflected in the visual representation of Ukrainian army. We can find, not really a lot, but we can find a number of visualizations of resistance and fight in women representation. And as for the you said that there were a lot of images of Superman that are generally that are from general culture. I think that we can find two main types there. We can, as you saw, there were a lot of typical images of Superman, superhero, and so on. But we can also see a lot of pictures from traditional Ukrainian culture, for example, Cossacks, who are also plays a role of symbol of resistance. I think that this generalization of representation is attempt of Ukrainians to be heard. Because a lot of memes are done in English at once. I know, for example, the authors, they are from Ukraine. There is a Twitter channel, Meme Forces of Ukraine, but they do everything in English. So they want to reach the audience abroad, not from Ukraine, not only from Ukraine, but from abroad. And maybe because of this, in digital space, they try to use the symbols that are familiar to everybody, that are known to everybody. It's the way to have our voice to be heard. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very interesting. We have another question from Mohammad Hossein.
Hello.
Hello.
First of all, I wanted to say thank you for this wonderful presentation, and it made me sad and, to be honest, a little bit stressed out, because I live in Iran, and this feels so close to home for me right now. First of all, we don't have access to so many things here, like internet, and I just want to apologize very quickly to Dr. Bailin. I cannot fill out Google Forms. I'm so sorry. And and just a quick question. I wanted to know if these memes have any positive effects or negative effects on society, maybe other than raising awareness. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it's like a therapy for Ukrainians, because really it's difficult to to remain stable, not to be really depressed. If you only think about something negative, you will be you won't feel bad. You won't feel good. Sorry, but I think humor plays a really important role since the very first day of the full-scale invasion. It's a way to digest all the negative events that are happening around Ukrainians. And it's a way also to not only consolidate society, but also really to cope, to process everything that is happening. I think that visuals, it's only a small part of this. We have a lot of like city legends that are born during this aggression about the resistance, about simple people who play a very important role on the battlefield. We have a lot of TikTok videos that are really funny. We have a lot of art that are really sometimes entertaining, and we have a new, like a stand-up culture that works to collect money, to raise money for the army, but they give concerts even now. It's a way, the humor is used as a means of releasing all the tension of the wartime. I think it's the main role. But also, as you said, as we said before, it's also the way to talk to the people, because visually you can also convey a lot of information, but sometimes it's more catchy. And I think these are two main roles: to be heard, to speak to the world, but also it's an attempt to process everything that is happening around and to be psychologically stable. I'm not sure if it's a good expression. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Vlad Orlov has a question or comment. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for your talk and your presentation. And I've been thinking about another possible difference between the two narratives, and this is the role of personality, because in the Ukrainian media, we see that some real people are being talked about, are being discussed. We know Ukrainian generals, we know Ukrainian officials, we know Zelensky, whereas in Russian, in my opinion, we almost never come across that. And we know almost no Russian generals, we know almost, we hear from, we rarely hear from some Russian officials, ministers, and so on. And I wonder if this difference is present, could be caught in your database.
Thank you for the question. I think this is also connected with the particularities of the construction of the power institutions, because in Ukraine, we really have a lot of people who want to speak and who want to express their opinion. I'm not sure if that it is allowed in Russia, so only those who are allowed to talk. I think in Ukraine, it's really not only about Zelensky, but also about Zaluzhny, the general, the commander-in-chief of Ukrainian army. We have a lot of visuals and memes about him. So it's also a new hero of Ukraine. And also we have a lot of memes about Arestovich. I don't know if you know him. So I think it's maybe it's because of the openness of the society. It's more democratic, so we can laugh at everybody, and we can idealize everybody. For example, if we talk about the images of Zelensky, it's also not all the time very positive. Sometimes we have really not really good memes, but they are just laughing at him in a good way. I'm not sure that it can be found in, for example, in Russian social media. So I think it's reflected. It's more varied in Ukrainian social media.
Before I ask Diana for her question, I was also wondering, just as a follow-up, do you know who runs those channels? Does it also correspond to this thesis?
I don't know who runs the channels, because sometimes it's a group of people. We have at least 9 or 10 administrators. I can find them, but in the list of the channel, channel members, but I don't know them, and I'm not sure if it's really somehow supported by government. So it's really civic initiatives that they're just collecting somewhere all these memes and they are then posting them in the channels. But for example, if we talk about groups in Vkontakte, maybe they are moderated more thoroughly, because there is a group that is called What About Хохлы, Что по хохлам, and they post some pictures or news about the special military operation, and then there are a lot of also visuals, but they are really uniform, so there is no deviation. Even in the comments there is only support, so there is no other opinion, and that's why I think they are maybe more thoroughly moderated.
Very interesting, thank you. Diana, please.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to add a very small note regarding the jokes about the leaders and especially about Zelensky. And I think that it's also very inspiring how Ukrainians, in a sense, are rewriting narratives that are provided sometimes by Russia regarding also Zelensky in a positive way, and how they reconstruct these messages in being much more liberal and progressive. Like, for example, probably about a month or 2 months ago, Russian propaganda have been circulating videos from the Quartal 95. So it's Zelensky previous occupation, because previously he was a comedian actor, and particularly his video when he've been dancing on the hills. It was a parody to Kazakhstan, and Russia have been revoking this as a kind of this negative, rotting Western influence, while Ukrainians, for example, on TikTok have been rewriting this in a sense that look how we are progressive, look how our president is progressive, look that even during the wartime, we are making some legislation changes in regard to LGBTQ community. And recently I saw even several jokes like why you've decided to go to hills lessons. And there were responses like, yeah, because do you know who is my president? And on one hand, of course, these are jokes, but these are jokes made with pride. And it's also, I think, pretty interesting in a sense.
But I think we can find similar process in Russian media also of readjusting or recirculating the same narratives. For example, they accept that they are orcs. And they have, there is a Telegram channel, News from Mordor, but openly pro-Russian. So I think it's also one of the mechanisms of counter-propaganda that is proper not only to Ukrainian social media, but also to Russian, trying to counter-attack, to create a counter-propaganda. And another example, there is another Accept of Pig, another quasi animal that was associated with Ukrainians. It's a half pig, half fish that is called Schweinekaras. And this Schweinekaras, this animal was then used in a Twitter community, Twitter Ukrainian community, as a meme. And now a lot of people have this creature in Ukrainian Twitter as an avatar. And it's also the way to reappropriate the weapon, the tool of propaganda from Russian media. And maybe if I analyze more, I will find more examples. But thank you for this example, very interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anna Melnikova has a question, please.
Hi, thank you so much for your wonderful talk. And I have a question about the role of religion in visual representation. Mm-hmm. So I know that for some people in Russia, for example, this war is more than just the war against Russia and Ukraine, but it's a sacred war against Western influence, for example. So I'm wondering if the idea of religion is represented in visually represented by Ukrainian and Russian mass media.
Yes, but these are not funny pictures. That's why they are not included in this data set. There is a lot of GIFs and pictures when we have on the front scene Russian soldiers, and then on the back stage, I don't know how to say, the saints. And one of the slogans, "The God is with us," it's one of the slogans of this war, and it's also reflected in the pictures that are supposed to support Russian warriors. And a lot of, for example, under the news from special military operation, there are a lot of pictures. Let's work, guys, the God with us, and some visual representations. And in Ukrainian social media, I think that I don't really have a lot of examples of such pictures. But there is also another expression, our gods, these are Ukrainian forces of Ukraine. Similar message, but we don't, I can't say that I have some visuals that supports this. So it's more present in Russian media.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments? I think we had a really good discussion. Thank you, everybody, for your questions and comments. And thank you, Alina, again, for this very rich and very interesting presentation. We really appreciate that you took the time and presented here. Yeah, I don't know.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for the questions. It was very interesting discussion.
Yeah, John, do you want to have the last word? Yes.
No, I don't. I would just love for if Alina, if it's okay, you can send us your slides and we would post them on the website, and everyone could take a look, especially because of all the visuals that people want to really look at in big and carefully and all of that. Thank you. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, and have a good evening or day or whatever time zone you're in. And we would be all very happy to see you next week or at the special seminars. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.